Welcome back again. Another beautiful day here on Lake Leola. It's getting late in the afternoon. I'm just going to make about 10 more minutes of this video and I'm going to call it quits. It's already been a pretty long video. So one of the things that I want to talk about is their arguments about there's a couple things. Number one, that the disciples worshipped on Sunday. And in history, I'm not going to go into all the detail, but I've done the research and looked through all kinds of documentation that even before Constantine changed the Sabbath Saturday to Sunday Sabbath, that and the church was behind that. The Catholic Church was behind that. In fact, the Catholic Church is, you can go to the Catholic Encyclopedia and look it up yourself, and Google, if you want, Sabbath, Catholic Church, and you'll have a whole list of different things that will come up about how the Catholic Church changed it, and that they pretty much bodacious statements on some of their priests' letters and stuff, writing that they are even bold to say that we changed the Sabbath to Sunday, and the Christians are blindly following it, and they have no scriptural support to why they do it. And when I read that, I was like, wow, that was a slap in the face. And we're following traditions of man. We're not following the Bible and what God has laid down from time of creation. God sanctified the day of the seventh day, and he hallowed it. Anyways, one of his arguments, my General Superintendent's arguments, is in Acts 20:7. And he says that, well, I'll read it here real quick what he said. He says, from the earliest times, Christians have usually conducted their main service on Sunday. Early believers chose the day of Christ's resurrection to emphasize that they were not under the old covenant. That is so true. In fact, when I did research, the early believers of those days did that so they would not be persecuted and killed because of the persecution against the Jews of the time. The Romans were killing the Jews. If you remember in the history, if you know anything about church history, in 70 AD when Jerusalem was wiped out by Rome, it was even before then the Romans were being persecuted and killed on a daily basis until 70 AD, and they completely wiped out Jerusalem and killed thousands, I don't know, maybe even more than that, of Jews. So the early believers, in fear of their lives, did change their day on the Sabbath to Sunday and worshipped on Sunday, and that was only for a short time until they got away from the Romans. And once they got away from the Romans, they reinstituted Sabbath and started worshiping again on on Saturdays. Anyways, the believers chose the day of Christ's resurrection to emphasize that they were not under the old covenant, which the Sabbath symbolized, but under the new covenant, which his resurrection instituted. Thus the believers at Troas met on the first day of the week for worship. Let's read that, 20:7. And upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. Go into the Strong's Concordance, okay? Go into Strong's. I'm not going in any other, I'm just going to the Strong's. There's other documentation out there to prove it. But go into the Strong's and look up that verse and click on the word weeks. and tell me what it says. No, never mind. I do it for your own personal satisfaction, but I'll tell you what it says. It says Sabbath. And the word day here in verse 7, it never existed. It's not even in the original text of the Greek. The translators that translated the Bible, which by the way was from King George in 1611, were under the Catholic Church. But anyways, and upon the first of the Sabbath, when the disciples came together to break bread. That's the way it's supposed to read. Not week. Not day of the week. It says, upon the first of the Sabbath, when the disciples came together. So, you go into 1 Corinthians, there was another one. And Paul instructed the Corinthians to collect offerings on the first day. Let's go back there and read that. 1 Corinthians 16 and verse 2. Upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store, as God has prospered him, there be no gatherings when I come. Again, exact same phraseology. Upon the first of the Sabbath, let every one of you lay up in store, as God has prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. He's only asking to do it one time. He's not asking them to do it continually. He's asking them to do it one time. He says, and upon the first Sabbath, let every one of you lay up in store. And that's one thing I'm going to conclude with this. I love the King James Bible, but there's a lot of interpretation errors. I've gone into the Psalms and the Proverbs, and even in those, in fact, years ago, I had brought this to attention to one of our pastors, that even in the Psalms, there was mistranslations, and when you read it as it's supposed to be read, it had a totally different meaning. So, I encourage you all, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and keep His laws. And I'm going to leave you with one last scripture in Matthew 5, in verses 17 through 20. It says, think not that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teach the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. And it says, for if your righteousness does not exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees and the scribes, it says, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. So, last concluding thought, are you following all of God's commandments? Shalom.